Welcome to Sew and Tell, where sewists from fashion, theater, and indie sewing bring their different perspectives to the spookiest topics in the sewing community. I'm Kate Zaynard.
I'm Amanda Carestio.
And I'm Meg Healy. Today on the podcast, we're celebrating Halloween with scary sewing horror stories. Think they don't exist? We promise you'll be flinching at these tales. Then we'll talk through our worst sewing fears. We'll each share something a little in our SewJo segment, and then we'll ask you to share something too. But first, how is everybody doing today?
I'm feeling ready to sew. I feel like the last, with my big trip out of the country and just school happenings, I just haven't had as much time to sew. And so I'm ready.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm ready to sew too, like non-wedding things. Yeah. And that's the last time I'm going to say the W word. After last episode, I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing about it. But yeah, I'm ready too. And I'm ready for fall sewing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
about
you,
to get all cozy?
Well, I'm coming from you out of the past. We're recording this episode a little early because when it drops, I'm going to be in Austria. Yeah. So we're going to assume I'm doing really well and I'm relaxing and speaking German and going to the opera.
And wearing amazing outfits.
And wearing amazing outfits
for your trip.
That I made for my trip.
Take lots of pictures.
I will do that. My husband's a little bit iffy about us actually posting pictures while we're out of town, but I've convinced him I can do some Instagramming. So, and I'll have my sister-in-law, who is awesome, take my pictures, and life is going to be great.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm excited.
You're going to have so much fun. You're having fun right now. I bet you are.
Oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun right now. All right, well, let's jump in to our horror stories. So I don't actually know what Meg and Amanda have picked for theirs, but I'm going to start us off by talking about a costume I made back when I was in my very early 20s. I was in college. I was in a costume construction class, and it wasn't our final project technically, but it was our big project for the semester. And we were doing a show called Arcadia by Tom Stoppard, which takes place both in a modern era and in the 1810s, so the Empire period. And each of us was assigned one of the costumes for the women in the earlier period to drape and construct. So they tried to make it easy for me because I was also doing props. They gave me not an actual dress, but they gave me a dressing gown for one of the characters to wear. And I got a picture of a vintage dress to sort of imitate. So what happened was, if you can picture a side-back seam, there was that, and then there were two more of them on basically the same curve, fanning out across the back, except instead of being seams, they were sets of 3 little pleats. There was also a bunch of pleating in the center back seam. So I sat here and I draped this thing. And by the time I was done with it, I had, I believe, 96 inches of width that ended up being pleated into the width of this person's back. And then it sewed partway down the back, and then the pleats released, and then they spread open into this lovely train and everything. So I had my draped piece. I'm sitting there with my muslin trying to figure out how to sew these. Remember, it was like a side-back seam. It was a curved seam. These curved pleats. And there was no way to do it to make those pleats curve on a sewing machine at my current level of skill. And in the end, I decided I needed to hand stitch all of them. So I hand stitched. There were 9 pleats on each side of the back. So it was 18 pleats there plus 2 deep box pleats, right? It was a layer of 2 box pleats in the center back seam. And I think there were some little pleats in the front too, but that was not really the big deal about it. So I had all of these all ready to go. The pieces were very long because there was no waist seam or anything. They were full length pieces from the shoulder to the train because it had a little train on it. And the fabric was home deck fabric, which was fine. but it was lined with this leftover red silk from a dress they had made the year before. It was beautiful. It had sort of a stripy weave to it, so it seemed to have a stripe to it. It was this deep red. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I started to cut out my pieces and discovered that I had enough to cut, I think, one of the back pieces. I think there was one of the back pieces, and I had to do full length of both the front pieces and the back pieces. And so I went to my technical director and I said, what do? I don't have enough fabric to make anything like this. And he said, oh, well, I also use that same fabric to make my curtains, so I'll bring those in and you can use those. Which kind of would have been okay, except that his dog liked to pee on those curtains. So he brought me these big stretches of fabric that were dusty and had these big spots of dog pee on them. And, he was like, just cut around him. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, just cut around him. I'm like, is there anything I can do? Because this really stinks. I know we couldn't wash it. It was silk. And he's like, no, you can't wash it. And I begged him and I begged him and I begged him. And I finally got him to agree that I could put the dang curtains into the dryer with some dryer sheets and tumble them on low for a few minutes to try to get some of the stink and the dust out of them.
Yeah.
And then I got to cut all my pieces around the big spots of dog pee. I told you I was going to tell you my dog's pee story someday, Meg. I remember having this conversation with you. Yeah. And then I got to hand stitch all of those pleats, and I had to stitch them through both layers, both the silk and the thick home deck cotton. My fingers were in terrible shape. And then I was just panicking about getting the thing finished. And so my costume shop director told me he'd put in the sleeves. He'd set in the sleeves for me because I had not done a lot of sleeves before and I wasn't really sure what I was doing. And he set them in backwards. Put the wrong sleeve in the wrong hole, so they were in backwards. Yep. So I had to, I had to take them out, and then I got to set in the sleeves right side out. So, and all of this was under a huge amount of stress because opening was in a couple of days, and I had to do all the props, and it was oh my gosh, it was so terrible. And when I was done with the whole thing, all 36 hand-stitched pleats that ended up on that thing. I don't remember how I came up with that, but I remember it was 36. Done with the whole thing, my teacher told me that it was the one that was really wowing everybody. Everybody was coming up and complimenting him on that piece. And he had not been very nice to me in the days preceding that because he was under a lot of stress. And so I think he was trying to be nice to me, but it was not sufficient to make up for the dog pee, is what I'm saying.
Man, I don't know if I could sew under pressure like that.
And that's why I don't anymore.
Yeah.
Because it was terrible, and I was not in a good place at that particular point in my life. And I'm sitting here, I'm telling the story, and it doesn't sound nearly as terrible as it was at the time because I left out a lot of the crying.
Did you add to the dog pee with your tears?
No, I just cried in the bathroom a lot.
Oh, no.
But it was, oh my gosh, it was so terrible. So that is my first.
Oh, that doesn't sound like fun.
It wasn't fun. And it took me a long time to decide that sewing was something that was fun to do because of experiences like that.
Oh, yeah. Gosh. Sometimes like a story like that, it could really knock you down a sewing peg or something. You just gotta.
Well, and I didn't have any sewing pegs. I had barely sewn anything before I took that class. No. That was like my third major sewing project of my life. Wow. And it was draping, which was fine. Draping was fine. But then, having to sew. And this teacher had this thing about how what he taught us to do was to actually draw the seam lines on the fabric, and then you pinned them together with parallel pins, and you sewed on the lines, perfectly on the lines. That's what you were supposed to do. And I was not good at sewing on the lines, and I got a lot of criticism for not sewing on the lines correctly. Jeez. Yep.
I mean, I feel like when I'm sewing, we sew under deadline for the magazines. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I start like trying to hurry, everything goes south.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I do better under those circumstances. Yeah, I really do when there's like that's why I usually always need a deadline. I'm always saying for you guys, like, what day does it need to be? I always need a, like a hard cutoff date, and I can, I like to work under pressure and a deadline.
I get that,
I always do good work.
But the kind of pressure I'm under most of the time doing stuff for the magazine here is not the kind of pressure you get in the theater.
Right.
It's not.
Oh, well,
it's not
I'm
as
sure.
big.
Yeah.
Though I have to say, there was one time I was embroidering a set of throw pillows. No, I was embroidering one throw pillow that was supposed to be a set, but there wasn't time because they were really, really big designs. This was just last year.
Oh, yeah.
The designs were really big, and they were taking a lot longer to stitch out than I realized. And I was literally running out of time before the photo shoot. Like, I did not know if I would get this throw pillow done in time just because of the amount of time it was taking to stitch these designs. And that was probably the most stressed I have ever been on a deadline here. And comparatively, it wasn't anything compared to what we used to deal with in the theater. So...
Wow.
All right, there's my horror story.
That's this a 36 hand stitch pleats.
I know,
like,
you could just stop there.
I mean, you could have just said that.
I could have just stopped
like, that's scary.
Curved. 36. Well, no, not all of them were curved. Some of them weren't, but 18 of them were curved in little triple layers. I'm going to see if I can find some pictures of this to put up on the thing so that you can see this thing, because just the fact that I had to hand stitch it, I can't even... Because he would have been so mad at me if my stitching wasn't perfect, and it was not going to be perfect on those curves. So, but I could make it perfect hand stitching. And I still like to hand stitch, which is unbelievable, right?
That is unbelievable.
All right, Amanda, do you have a horror story for us?
Most of mine are pretty lame and involve Amanda not making a muslin and then finding out later that the sleeves are too tight. I did once really carefully pin-based a quilt to my parents' carpeted living room floor. So I pinned it.
I could see how that would easily happen.
I pinned the whole thing, and then I went to lift it up, and it was very securely pinned to the carpet.
My gosh.
I've done that a couple times.
So I think there was like still carpet bits attached to it later on in the process. And then I think like the real horror stories happen for me when I injure myself while sewing. Like I think I have nightmares about accidents with the rotary cutter and scissors. I also have a really bad habit of trying clothing on while I'm sewing it, like a lot of times. So I can't remember what I was sewing, but it might have been a jumpsuit. And
there's still like the pins in it.
I had pins in it, and I was just like, oh well, I'm just gonna sit in this and work on the ties or whatever the next step was in the process. And I dropped my scissors onto the floor, reached down to pick them up, and totally took a pin to the tummy, like deep.
Oh, like a full.
Like deep in my tummy, and I am a fainter. So, and that one, I almost fainted. It was so deep and so painful. So, yeah, that's probably my best horror story.
That reminds me of, I guess I have like a mini one that for pins. I usually wear a wrist pin cushion. Yeah. And without it's just habit. I always wear it, but for some reason I wasn't, and I'm sewing, and just habit. I took my pin out of my suit, and I stuck it right in my wrist, and it stayed there.
Gross.
I remember. Yeah, I that wasn't even on my list, but that just reminded me. I was like, oh my gosh, I did do that. Oh, and I was like, but
well, didn't you also? Didn't you get your finger with the serger?
Oh yeah, my fingernail completely ripped, except for the top little bit, so it ripped from the root up.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, with the serger, and it was.
That's a nightmare.
That way, it's kind of like now. I can handle if I lived through that.
I can
live through anything. I always have. I know maybe we can talk about this a little bit in sewing fears, but I always get scared. In school, we were always. We were told we had to sew with either glasses or protective goggles because like sometimes like if like a pin breaks or something, it could or if you sew over a pin and it can catch it, it can fling up in your eye.
Yeah.
And so that was so...
Oh my gosh. It happens to me all the time. And I do wear glasses. I'm always happy that I do when that happens.
I know. Like a little I'm not good at...
seriously injure your eye.
You can get seriously injured in your... Yeah. So I usually try and remember to always have my wrist cushion on and my glasses gear. On. Oh, my safety gear. Yeah. I know. That just reminded. Let me just stick that in my arm. For later,
For later. Oh my gosh.
For later. Oh, yeah. But I have one. I just changed it up. I was gonna say another one, but it's also kind of embarrassing. So I actually just thought of another one that while I was in school, it was the the evening wear semester. So it's like your third year. Like everyone's excited about learning about evening wear, and there's like an evening wear competition. One student's there's 3 levels of awards and stuff, and so it's really big, and you get a display in the hallway. And so I made this edgy, cool leather evening wear. It had a leather bodice that was all zipped, and it had a skirt attached, and we have to do final fittings. And so it was the presentation for the judges the next day. So this is the fitting, and you put them on the dress form, and you have to mark your bust, waist, and hip line on your garment so they can see it, the teachers can see it corresponds to the levels on the dress form. But I didn't want to. Usually you can pin. It's called soutache and on dress forms, or some bias tape to show or a thread. A lot of students did the thread basting, but I didn't want to because in leather I didn't want to make holes, and so I put tape on the lines, and I got perfect fitting. They're love your design, Meg, great job. And I was I'm so excited about the presentation. I take off the bust tape line, and the finish rips. There's a line of the finish off the leather ripped right off. There's this line across the chest, and it was a corseted. So I cried right in class. I remember. I wasn't going to say this one. It just reminded me, and oh my gosh, that was. And so I spent the whole night. Luckily I had some, and there was those little pieces, and so, but it was all finished with a zipper around. I'll put a picture of it. It ended up being great because I actually won one of the awards, and one of the prize is when you get a professional photo shoot with a model with your evening wear design. So I spent the whole night recutting those pieces. So that was that wasn't fun, but it turned out great. It was just you just can't believe that it's just that was not now. But I mean, you learn. I'll never put tape on leather again.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That hurts my soul.
Oh, my gosh. I know. I'm my friend, my classmate, just looked at me. She goes, ooh, ouch.
Lord. All
Live and learn.
Live and learn, for sure.
And wear glasses. And wear glasses.
Glasses.
Do you want to be done, or do you want me to tell one more?
Tell us one more.
Okay. Yeah, tell us. Yeah.
This is another costuming story, because most of my horror stories are. This one was a cape. We were doing Pinocchio, and there's the evil magician character who runs the circus that Pinocchio runs away to. I can't remember his name for the life of me at the moment, but we had this actor who was 6'5" who was playing this, and they wanted him in a floor-length cape, and it was going to be a semicircular cape. So we really needed to make the cape basically needed to be a half of a circle with a 6-foot diameter approximately. And they wanted it to be patchwork with shiny fabric. So it was lame, it was sequin fabric, it was other sorts of metallic knits. It was basically anything you could think of that was metallic and hard to sew. That's what it was made out of. And it was strips. I think the widest strips were maybe 4 inches. And the narrowest were 2.5 maybe. And so my friend and I had to cut a really whole lot of these strips. And then they got cut into, shorter pieces. And then And then we laid them all out so we didn't have anything that next to each other, so nothing ever was next to each other. And then we sewed these big long strips, and then we sewed all the big long strips together. And then we got these huge pieces that we laid out, these, basically quarter circles that with a 6-foot diameter. And we cut out the pieces, and I think we did a seam up the back, center back. And then my costume shop manager looks at me and she says, okay, well, this isn't particularly stable. I'm going to need you to take some fusible web and this just horrible, hideous, ugly brown polyester fabric, and I'm going to need you to fuse all of these together. I'm going to need you to fuse all of this metallic, fancy fabric onto this horrible brown fabric so that it's stable. So I then spent, I believe, 2 8-hour days sitting at the ironing board, fusing it one iron width at a time across this entire cape. She let me not work on the cape anymore after the end of that day.
I was wondering, if some of the metallic fabric would burn.
I don't remember. I don't think it did. I think it must have had a press cloth or something. But it was just, you were wrestling with these pieces of fabric that were so big, and you were having, and I'm pretty sure, I guess it's possible that we fused them in the 2 pieces instead of the after we hemmed them. I honestly can't remember, but they were just such big pieces. And the ironing board was, it was thicker than a regular ironing board. It was a pressing board for a costume shop, but it still wasn't that big. And so I was constantly wrestling with it and draping it and sitting there in the heat, putting that thing down, waiting whatever 10 seconds it was, moving it over. And I just remember just sitting there like, this is a nightmare. This is me sitting here for 16 hours doing this.
Oh my gosh.
Thing. So in the end, it was very, very striking, very, very beautiful, and probably worth it. But it wasn't fun.
Do you have any pictures?
Oh, I don't think I do have any pictures of that one, unfortunately. I did go on their website a couple of weeks ago for a different reason entirely, and I don't think there are pictures of that show up. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you guys that one. But it was very cool, and it was a nightmare. But she didn't make me do the lining, so that was good. Yeah.
That's good.
All right. Have we horrified our listeners sufficiently?
Horrified.
Yeah.
You're horrified?
I'm pretty horrified, yeah.
All right.
Now I'm just very cautious now in my future. So this week, it's going to be a very cautious sewing week. I'm going to go very slow.
And wear your glasses.
Wear my glasses. Oh, geez.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about what scares us about sewing.
Oh, yeah. When you start sewing, you can feel invincible and be able to do and sew anything. I mean, because it's a superpower, right? But sometimes there are sewing fears, and certain projects, fabrics, and even notions can be left to the wayside because of a fear. So do you guys have any sewing fears?
I definitely do. I definitely do. And but I think my overarching, the thing that causes me the most anxiety, and I don't know, I guess anxiety is maybe the same as fear, but is not having enough time. I just have, so many things I want to sew, but just never feeling like there's enough time to do all the things.
Yeah.
So I think I have many smaller ones, but that one I think gets me with the most impact.
I think I have, well, first of all, I didn't bring it up earlier, but I definitely have some fears around certain sort of body horror things. I've put a sewing machine needle into my finger before.
Yeah.
That sort of thing is, and I've also bobbled a rotary cutter and caught it on my finger wrong, which is always awful. But
the rotary cutter ones are the worst.
I know. And
even thinking about it.
And for a second, you don't even see them. They're so sharp. There's nothing. And then it starts. And then you're like, well, I need a very, very large something to staunch this with. So, but, it always seems funny to me because it's not something that, like, getting a pin in my finger, I mean, that happens to me like how many times a day? You don't even think about doing that sort of thing. Though that wrist thing you talked about earlier, that was horrifying.
Yes. Just to like look over and see it like sticking in there.
It was like.
I can't think about it too hard.
And man, I could see myself doing that. Not like I don't wear a wrist pin cushion at all. So I can't. So I wouldn't actually do it, but I could totally see myself in a situation like that, it's just where you're just you're so into a habit.
It's a rhythm. Yeah, it's like a
And then I also have some things. I don't know that I'd call them fears, but there are certain things I'm kind of intimidated by. I'm kind of intimidated by just pants in general. I've talked about this before, how I just struggle to find things that fit me right, and also. Really fitted things. I don't. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of really fitted things at the moment, and certain fabrics just, I can't think of any right off the top of my head. But and buttons, I hate doing buttons and buttonholes. It's the buttonholes. I don't care about the buttons.
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, buttonholes sometimes scare me too, because you have like a finished garment and then they're hard to. If you mess them up, they're hard to recover from.
Right. If you put it in the wrong place, there's nothing you can do. Unless you like pull out the placket and start that step over again.
Exactly.
And that's probably it's just.
See, I feel the same. I feel that way about zippers. I will do buttons and buttonholes all day long, but I think I just trust my machine, and I've also messed them up so many times that I can usually kind of fix them as long as nobody looks too closely. But I do not like zippers. It's not like a major keep you up at night kind of fear. I just prefer buttons over zippers.
I'd do a zipper over button any day, but if I can get away with skipping a zipper, I'll do it. One of my Vienna blouses is supposed to have a side zipper, and I'm like, it's pretty loose fitted. I think I don't really need it. I might need some help getting out of it at the end of the day, but I can get into it fine. So that's the important thing, right?
Right.
Yeah. I'm on my turtleneck journey right now, and I'm like, I can squeeze this over my head. It's stretchy enough. I don't need to put a back zipper in it. I'm like, let's try. I'm like, I should really add it. My fear is being stuck in a turtleneck. I can't get out. Oh my God.
It could happen.
I mean, it could. Luckily, this one I'm wearing right now has a zipper. So
it's got little ballerinas on it. That's so cute.
Yeah, it has little ballerinas. I actually didn't make it, unfortunately. But sometimes when you see something in a store and the fabric is just so cute, you have it. I had to buy it. Like, I could have made it, but I just loved the fabric print so much. It wasn't about the little ballerinas.
You weren't buying the garment. You were buying the fabric.
No.
But it was already in garment shape, so you had to just wear like a garment.
It was already sewn for me, so I thought, why not? Well, one of my big sewing fears is if one of my machines breaks or something. I don't know. Or if I don't know, if the tension's all weird and I'm trying all these and it's if I have to sew something, I get really stressed because I should probably. I'm not a very good instructional manual reader. That's something that Julian and I, when we get something new, what do you do first? You look at the instructions. I go to the instructions last. I always think I can figure it out first. If building something or, for a wedding, we got all these appliances and I'm just pushing all the buttons, making it work. And Julian's I'm like, you don't need that. You can figure it out. And same with a sewing machine. I'm pushing all these buttons, turning all these knobs. And I was like, I could probably just read the manual. But still, sometimes that always freaks me out. Or if I can't, I don't know, fix a problem with the machine because that's really, I don't like that.
Do you remember that time you were about to do a sew along and we couldn't figure out how to load the embroidery design onto the machine.
Oh,
and we sat there for
remember
we
that.
sat there for like an hour and a half trying to figure it out, and I finally managed to find the right spot in the. Because I was sitting there flipping through the manual. I couldn't find the right spot in the manual, and it took like forever to figure that out. I remember that.
Yeah. I know, because I was, when we had Allie working with us, we were trying to figure out, and then Allie's like, let's go get Kate. She might know what to do. And then you and then the three of us were just.
Yeah, we're all sitting there pressing all the buttons, and I'm like, let's look at the manual. And you guys are sitting there pressing the buttons while I'm flipping through the manual trying to find the right page. And
oh man, I have definitely had some dark moments with my serger. Like, I feel like, you go down to sew, you're super excited. And then your serger just
it's the moment, like the loops are all weird, and you're
the moment the underlooper comes unthreaded, and you realize you're going to have to thread the underlooper.
Yeah,
and then for me, it's like the underlooper comes undone, and there are one of two things happens. One is I rethread it and it's fine. The other one is that I spend the next 2 hours rethreading the underlooper and it will not catch, and I'm just doing something wrong, and no matter what I do, I cannot get the underlooper to catch right, and it will just break every time I try to check to make sure it's threaded correctly.
Yeah.
And those are my dark moments.
Sometimes I just walk away. Like if my serger I get so frazzled, and then there's just no coming down from that and no salvaging that sewing session.
Yeah.
So I just walk away.
Yeah.
Sometimes you listen to the serger.
Yeah. Well,
listen to the serger.
Walk away now. Listen to the serger. It's true that when I get really frustrated, walking away is my just like, I'm not going to do this anymore because it's just making me angry.
Yeah.
And it's not fun.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is all stories about when sewing's not fun.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know.
I will say, if we skip on over to particular projects, I've done a pretty good job of tackling my sewing fears, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But for me, bras are still like the unknown territory, and I don't know what it is. It just seems super complicated. Like even just sourcing the materials, I think that's been a real hindrance for me, and it just kind of scares me. They seem really finicky. Yeah. Although I feel like people have told me, it's not that big a deal once you do it, like everything else. But I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah, when you sit there and you look at a bra, there's all this detail and these little pieces and all this.
So small scale.
Yeah, and all these little elements to it that, there's...
And you could... end up spending all this time and money sewing it, and then it doesn't even fit.
Right?
It's similar when I go bra shopping.
Oh gosh,
like 1 in 20 maybe are okay, and so it's that's definitely scary. Just even just like the fit. Yeah, I would say I would. Yeah.
But that's a good point too. I haven't sewn anything. I haven't sewn anything boned. I haven't made a corset or anything like a corset in a very long time. And that is because the bones that I have access to in my life are the terrible nylon ones that I hate. And if I could actually get my hands on some nice spiral boning or some flat steel boning or whatever, I'd be much more likely to do some corset making. But there's just I don't want to do it with inferior product. And whenever I look at how much it's going to cost online to buy all this stuff, it's like prohibitive. I don't want to spend that much money to make a corset I'd probably wear once in my life. I don't wear corsets a lot. I don't go out a lot. So it turns into this is a waste of time and money, especially when I start to get into I can't just buy the bones. I have to buy the tipping fluid, or I have to buy the tips, and you have to make sure you've got something that'll cut them, and you have to do it this way. And I don't want to buy the bones already pre-cut because what if I want to change the pattern? And then you have to find a pattern too.
I should check out there's some really great sewing supply stores here in Toronto. I haven't really scouted out for boning, but I'm sure they have the kind that you like. I can always, next time I come film, I
bring
can
a load.
Come bring you some. Yeah.
Be careful offering me that because I might take you up on it. Actually, there's a store here in Denver that I've never been to that started out as a bridal store, but now also has other fabric as well.
Yeah, I've heard about that place.
Allen's or Eileen's, something like that. And I still haven't gotten there. They probably might have it because, wedding dresses tend to have more boning than most things that you wear on a regular basis. I guess that's not really a sewing fear. I kind of tangented it off.
Well, but I think sometimes, I mean, whether it's fear or, you know, whatever it is, like there's things that you just don't do because of, you know,
reasons.
For me, it's the cost is often like, sometimes I'm like, I don't worry about wasting my time because like you will learn something and, you know, I'm happy just to use my hands in that way. And but it's the price point sometimes for projects that I'm like, there's no way that alone would scare me because it is such a big investment. If it doesn't work out, then
that's true.
So
it
many
ups the stakes.
So many costume historical style gowns that I've never made because the cost of buying the fabric I would want in that amount of yardage is just
a lot of yardage.
Not something I can do. Also, where would I wear it? Again, I'm trying to be more practical about these sort of things. But
What about you, Meg? Do you have any sewing projects you haven't tackled?
I don't think it's, for me, a sewing fear is it's not to do with a project or any particular type of fabric. Or I can approach anything. I'm very good at just allowing myself to feel like maybe this is something new to me, like I'll fail, like no big deal. But where fear comes for me, along with like my machine breaking down and me not looking at the manual and just trying to do it myself and just making it worse, is actually sewing for other people can kind of be a big fear of mine. Just because if it's comes from a fear of like failure too, like if it's not perfect, if it's for myself, then it's, but I get really self-conscious if I'm making something for someone else and I just want to make sure it's like perfect for them, and I just sort of get all in my head and anxious. Like I don't know, then you kind of go like above and beyond, and I don't know. So sometimes
and then what if
I
they
get a fear
receive it poorly. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So sometimes I can be hesitant about doing things for other people, just because it's not that I don't want to. Like I like helping people and making things. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just get scared that it's not and they think that less like, oh, I don't like it. Maybe it's not that well sewn, and I just want everything. I just want to live up to the expectation that people have of me, like as someone in the sewing industry. It can be a lot of pressure, so sometimes that can be a fear for me as well.
See, I just went through this total journey over here because I was sitting here thinking, oh, I don't have that fear because. I used to sew for other people all the time. I never sewed for myself. Yeah. And then I realized, but with those people, it was my job, and there was a certain amount of, you'll wear this and you'll like it, and if you don't like it, tough, because this is what you're wearing.
Exactly.
Because it was a designed costume, and and then I started thinking what you were saying about making stuff for other people, which I very rarely do. But yeah, actually, I do get a lot of very nervous feelings about the thought about sewing something for somebody who might judge. Like my niece, when I was sewing my niece her Little Mermaid costume I was talking about a couple weeks ago, not a big deal. But if my sister had picked it up and decided it was poorly constructed, that would have been totally different. Because my niece would I'm sure she just loved it. But having somebody judge it as wanting, I can totally get that as a fear. And I'm feeling that now.
It's just easy to make something for yourself because I don't know. It's just
for yourself. You can be like, well, I'm judging myself for not doing this right, but also I don't care because I'm the one wearing it.
Yeah, exactly. What a episode so far. We're just talking about stabbing ourselves with pins and just being scared of something.
Well, on a brighter note,
it is.
I definitely, I love this question about taking steps to overcome your sewing fears, because I feel like I don't always, spend a lot of time looking back. I'm often thinking about the next project. But in this past year, I've actually done a lot. I feel like the bathing suit I made, even though it was so plain so normal and not spectacular, I felt amazing to have sewn that. And also, not from a technical aspect, but kind of getting over my fear and low-key hatred of jumpsuits has been a major milestone for me.
She is wearing a jumpsuit right now, by the way.
I am.
Are you really? I love it. Is that's the Zadie?
Yes, the Zadie.
I
love it.
Is that like a denim?
Yes.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
I need to make one of those.
And I think that's another kind of fear to kind of think about, like what, and maybe fear is not the right word, but thinking about your style and how closely you define yourself, and then like challenging yourself to kind of step out of that. That was a big moment for me with the jumpsuits, because I had been a hater for so long, and then I had to eat all my words because they're super comfortable. And but I think that happens a lot when you think about like your style and what kind of rules you set up for yourself about what looks good on you, what is you, and all of that. And I'd say the other one for me was sewing jeans. That was a real big moment of feeling victorious and doing something that I really just kind of never pondered doing. And then, got more tempted and did it and just felt like a superhero.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Are there specific projects that you challenged yourself with and overcame fears about?
Well, there was that dressing gown with the 36 hand-stitched pleats.
Yeah, that counts.
I had a lot of fear around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of things that I've done because I've sewn so many, costumes and things like that have been kind of intimidating and sort of, I don't know if I can do this. And what I found is that most of the time it's just a pattern. It might not be a pattern quite like you've ever made before, but if you sew the right sides together, then it turns into what it's supposed to turn into. That said, I still haven't.
If you sew the
what was that?
If you sew the right sides, I just love the in between. If you sew the right sides,
that's all you got to do.
If you sew the correct. I'm sorry. If you sew the correct seams togetder.
No, I know. It's just.
I'll tell you.
Just funny. It's like a pattern. A pattern can work if you sew it.
If you sew it. I mean, it's true. I mean, I'll tell you, Meg, I was sewing a Berta style cardigan for this trip,
geez.
And I sat there and I was looking at it and I was like, I know that I'm supposed to look at the numbers to figure out where I'm supposed to be sewing where, but oh my God, I can't figure this out. It's like a puzzle. I don't know how these pieces are supposed to fit together. I don't know what's going on here. And then I did what you recommend and I found the sides with the numbers and I kind of stitched them together. And after like the third step, it became really obvious how it went together.
Yeah.
But
nice.
Getting started was really hard. And that was very much a question of it had three pieces. It had three pieces, and yet I had a lot of trouble figuring out how to put it together. But in the end, all I had to do was figure out the right seams to sew together, and it turned into what it was supposed to turn into. So I don't know where I'm going with that. So, yeah. In the meantime, if you have seen what is it? Is it the December-January issue that has our New Year's resolutions in it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. If you've seen that yet, or look for it if you haven't seen it yet, one of my New Year's resolutions for this year is to sew something scary. So jeans, maybe a swimsuit,
perfect
something
timing.
like that. I'm not sure what yet, but it is going to happen sometime next year, maybe. We'll see. Resolution.
Nice. I think the next step I'm going to take is I'm going to get my manuals out and service, like oil my machines and like I think that's what I need to do. Then it can ease my pain.
Yeah.
If something happens, I can be, well, at least I put oil in
Yes.
it. I know I kind of slack on that, on that level, but I think they need a little love. They sure do get a lot of use. So I do, like the general after your, the dust and everything, but I do need to oil them for sure. Yeah. And I shouldn't just try and guess where it goes. I should probably look at the manual.
Find the right place.
Find the right place, yes. Oh.
Well, now that we've faced and fought our sewing fears, shall we move on to our SewJo? talk about things that make sewing fun instead of things that make sewing not fun? For a little bit?
Let's do it.
All right. So for anyone who doesn't know, SewJo is our sewing mojo. So we like to talk about what it is that's giving us hours. So Meg, why don't you start us off?
Well, actually, my in with the fall theme, I'm just loving in Toronto right now. It's like crisp fall air and crunchy leaves, and I'm just loving fall right now. And I'm kind of wanting a pair of, I've been looking at fabrics and I'm really into like a camo print. I want to make like a pair of like camo like cargo pants.
Nice.
I've been making so many tops lately. I need to make some bottoms to go with them. So that's kind of I'm starting to work on that, just going over what patterns I can use and stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of digging that right now. And I'm kind of thinking I might I'll make a separate pair or make like these into overalls.
Oh, nice, with like a little, like a panel that comes off or something.
Yeah. So I'm toying with that.
Cute.
With that. Yeah. So it's kind of what I'm feeling right now.
Awesome. How about you, Amanda?
I am definitely also into fall sewing right now. But I would also say I am, I'm a total cheater. Because I have started a really like my biggest crochet project to date, and I have not crocheted in a pretty long time, and I really only ever make hats. But I got really inspired to get a project together for my London trip so that I could work on it while I was there. So I did.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So it is. I mean, I'll finish it maybe next fall, but I'm making a...
What is it?
It's a cardigan.
Oh my gosh.
It's in super neutrally color, but it's really cute. And it is actually, you start with the back, and I've mostly finished that panel. And then you do the two fronts, and then the sleeves, which are really fun. They've got these really kind of big... bobbles all along the sleeves. So it's really, we'll see how it goes, but it's kind of almost starting to look like a cardigan. And I don't know, I mean, I love sewing with cozy fabrics all fall and winter, but it is kind of nice to just have something that you can take with you, especially.
It's like a portable for sure. Traveling for sure.
Because you guys know I needed another cardigan. So
yes, we did know that.
Of course. Is crocheting the same as knitting, where you crochet all the separate pieces and then sew them together, or does it kind of all come together in one?
I think there are probably patterns that you do all together, but this one is just panels that you seam them together.
And then you then sew okay, cool. I guess, that brings up another sewing fear. I'm terrified of like crocheting. I've just tried a couple times and failed miserably.
I have some pretty good knitting fails, but crochet, I don't know, seems kind of accessible and fun and low-key.
I find crochet to be easier than knitting. But right now my project is knitting.
I've gotten more success in knitting than crochet is. I can't wrap my hand around it, but I can knit a square. But crocheting, it looks like a bunch of knots knotted together, and I don't know. And so, maybe I'll try that one day.
Well, Amanda can show you how. So can
maybe.
I, actually. All right. Well, for me,
what about yours?
My SewJo today is that I have this moment while I'm in Austria to just take a deep breath, maybe go to a few fabric stores, but not worry about sewing anything, because I am done with my Vienna wardrobe. And when you hear this, I'll be wearing my Vienna wardrobe. And I can start looking into sewing other things. For the first time in a long time, I don't have it hanging over me, this whole wardrobe that I had to plan. And so I have this freedom to sew whatever I want to sew. So right now I'm just taking a moment to savor that feeling.
Nice.
Oh, love that feeling.
I will say I made a bunch of garments for London. I wore most of them. It was a little cooler and rainier than I was expecting. And I came home with a lot of fabric to sew up. And it was just kind of, I had a moment where I was like, this is kind of silly. I sewed all this stuff to get here, and then I got a whole bunch of fabric to sew more stuff. I mean, That's totally how I roll, but I really appreciate taking a moment.
This feels like you're telling me not to buy any fabric in Vienna.
You definitely should buy some fabric. Okay. But just, maybe it's for like future makes. Maybe you don't have to make them right when you get home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention when I was in New York for our honeymoon, we went to my favorite spandex store and I allowed myself 1 yard of crazy spandex. So
what'd you get?
I got this spandex. It was so funny. It was like a collage spandex, but it was like, it looked like there was like a bunny on there and there was like a lime green it looked like a collage of our like wedding theme. It was so surreal.
Awesome.
Like Julian and I look at each other. We're like, you have to get that one. So I think I'm not sure what I'm going to make with them yet. I think I'm thinking a pair of leggings or a bodysuit that I could wear like under like a long sleeve bodysuit, maybe a turtleneck because I just still on the turtleneck train. So it's always nice to get a fabric one.
It's my favorite souvenir.
And then obviously I got my wedding that lace that for my wedding dress. I got that in Italy. And actually, like a fun fact, I'm going to be blogging about it too. But it was a designer's remnant, and I found the collection it was from on Vogue, the exact lace. So that was kind of
very
fun.
Cool.
So yeah. Buy all the fabric when you travel. That's our motto of this.
But don't pressure yourself to sew it right when you get home.
No.
There you go.
No. Mm-hmm. All right, so that leads us into Sew and Tell then. So we want to know, what is your greatest sewing fear? I tried to do it. We were talking earlier and before we started recording. We're like, well, should we say things in spooky voices? And
they wouldn't let me do the opening in my spooky voice. And now Meg's sitting here doing the Sew and Tell question in spooky voice. And I feel very put upon right now.
That was not spooky, though. You still sounded friendly and nice.
That was really on a whim. I did not plan to do that. So please let us know, what is your greatest sewing fear? Because of timing and Kate fabric shopping in Vienna. Right. We're going to actually be reading this, and you'll be back by this time, right? When we're doing the Instagram live. Yeah, so she can maybe show us what she got. So November 7th, we're going to be reading your answers live on @SewandTellPod. So make sure to find us there. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful Halloween. As I've mentioned,
happy Halloween.
It's my favorite holiday.
Me too.
So I'm going to embrace it. And this, for any of you who are listening to this after Halloween, I hope you had a wonderful holiday.
Yes.
And we'll see you guys soon.
Yeah, I have all kinds of Halloween candy to eat and keep you sewing in your sewing room.
Yeah. I was going to say, I always love the day after Halloween because there's lots of candy sales. So
I don't know what that's going to be like in Austria, but I'll find out.
Yeah. Report back.
Oh, right, eh? Yeah. Actually, I was in Italy 2 years ago on Halloween, and it was just on a regular day. I don't think they did anything. Fun fact. Well, anyways, happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy stitching. Happy Halloween.
All right. Bye.
For links to everything we talked about in this episode, go to our show notes page at sewdaily.com/sewandtell. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at sewandtellpodcast@peakmediaproperties.com or visit us on Instagram @sewandtellpod. Answer our Sew and Tell question, tell us your SewJo, or just leave us some feedback. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. And please leave us a review, ideally a good one, because that helps listeners like you find our podcast. And tell your sewing friends about us too. Thanks for listening, and happy stitching. Sew and Tell is produced by Meg Healy, Amanda Carestio, and me, Kate Zaynard. Our consulting producer is Ron Doyle, and our executive producer is Jared Mayer.